an original.
From Story Studio Network.
Welcome to The Fatigue Fixer, the podcast where we get real about why you're so tired and what you can do about it. Every 2 weeks, we'll gather here for honest, heart-to-heart conversations about reclaiming your energy, your patience, and feeling truly at home in your body. I'm Dr. Sarah Vadeboncoeur, a naturopathic doctor, Menopause Society certified practitioner, Enneagram 3 entrepreneur with enough business ideas to last me 10 lifetimes, and a hockey and baseball mom. Over the past 15 years, I've helped thousands of women just like you cut through the confusion and finally feel like themselves again. And now, I want to hear from you too. Use the link in the show notes below to leave me a voicemail, to share your story, give feedback on an episode, ask a question, or tell me what's been exhausting you. And your voice might even make it onto the show. Together, we'll get to the root of what's really draining your energy and give you the tools, clarity, and encouragement you need to fix your fatigue. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to The Fatigue Fixer. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah, and today I want to share with you my journey with sleep. I want you to better understand that if you are also having trouble sleeping, a huge part of what's contributing is your beliefs about sleep, how much you worry about getting sleep, and your relationship to your bed. If you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you know that I've had my share of sleep troubles. And today I want to share what I did to help fix my poor sleep and why worrying less about my sleep and maybe even going to bed later might be the ticket to better sleep for you. I want to let you in on a little secret, which is this. My sleep significantly improved when I stopped worrying so much about my sleep. I stopped obsessing about whether or not I was getting enough deep sleep. I ditched my sleep tracker, which we'll talk more about. And I also stopped drinking alcohol, which I know has made a huge difference. If you want to learn more or hear more about my journey with alcohol and sleep, you can go back to episode 16. So today's episode is not me telling you that you need to stop scrolling before bed, although you do need to do that, or that you need to start taking melatonin or some other magical sleep supplement. This is the one where your obsession with sleep is making it worse. So let's dive in. We all know that sleep is important, yet if we were getting a sleep report card, a lot of us would be getting a failing grade. We know that less than 50% of adults regularly get the recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep. A quarter of us are getting somewhere between 6 and 7 hours, and 1 in 5 of us are getting less than 6 hours. We also know that women are much more likely than men to struggle with sleep. About 60% of women struggle with sleep issues versus 38% of men. I had I thought it was funny, interaction with my partner lately because he, like a lot of men, from what I hear, he has this special ability to, I swear, he can fall asleep before his head hits the pillow. Like we can be talking or reading and he turns his light out and he's like snoring before he's even put his head down. And I was saying how a lot of men don't have sleep issues because I said, you guys don't have anything in your head. And he was a little offended by that. But what I meant is a lot of men are not carrying the same mental load that a lot of us are. And we'll talk more about what's happening in our minds and how that impacts our sleep. All that to say, women often have busy brains, and our busy brains often make it really hard for us to get good sleep. To go back to my journey, I'm taking you back to 2020. It is early pandemic, and I am surrounded by people who are early adopters of health technology. And one of the things that a lot of my friends are wearing and getting at this time is the Oura Ring. So I decide I would like to track my sleep. I want to know what's going on. I'm going to get myself an Oura Ring. And so I get it and I start becoming obsessed with the data. I'm tracking my sleep. I'm looking at my heart rate variability, which is a measure of stress response. And right away, I start getting feedback that I'm a bad sleeper, and that my HRV is very low, meaning I'm way more highly stressed than I would have thought or wanted to admit at that time. And so I became obsessed with those stats. I would wake up every morning, even before I got out of bed. First thing I would do, open up my app, look, how much sleep did I get? How much deep sleep? Oh my God, I got less than an hour of deep sleep. This is terrible. I became so obsessed with how poorly I was supposedly sleeping. And I became obsessed with wanting to be a better sleeper and specifically to be able to get more deep sleep. And I didn't realize how obsessive I had become until a friend of mine took me to this beautiful cabin in the woods that had no electricity. We were going to bed. It was pitch black. It was super quiet. And she's watching me put on my eye mask and my earplugs. And she's like, why do you need those? We are in the middle of nowhere. There's literally no light and there's no sound. And I was like, because if I don't put these on, I won't sleep. Like I was so addicted to my eye mask and my earplugs that I knew if I don't wear these, I will just not sleep. Like my routine was so regimented that if I veered off any part of it, I was convinced my sleep was going to be garbage. And often it was garbage. There's a name for this. It's called orthosomnia. If there was a group for orthosomniacs anonymous, I would be the first person standing up there being, hello, my name is Sarah, and I'm an orthosomniac. And what that means is that you have an unhealthy obsession with achieving perfect sleep. You're often obsessing over your sleep stages like I was. And this is often caused by an over-reliance on wearable sleep track devices. Sleep trackers have become very popular. We'll talk about whether or not they're accurate in a minute. And part of what this has done is it's given us data. Now, health data can be very helpful if it's helping you make better decisions. So if you're wearing a sleep tracker and that sleep tracker has helped you go to bed earlier, put your phone down, make your bedroom dark, if it's helped you make positive changes, wonderful. But the flip side of tracking data is that it can create a lot of health anxiety, it can create obsession, and it can create this striving to hit these perfect metrics. And what you're going to learn very quickly, if you haven't picked up on it already, is that striving for better sleep doesn't help me sleep better. If anything, it's probably making things worse. And what this looked like for me, and maybe you can relate, is a lot of catastrophizing. So I would say things, and one of the things I really have noticed with hindsight is how much I talked about being a bad sleeper. I would say things like, I'm a terrible sleeper. I don't get any deep sleep. I can't function if I don't get 7 hours of sleep, right? Everything was like a catastrophe when it came to sleep. Again, I would wake up, check my sleep score, and then it was almost always bad. And then I would see that score and tell myself and think, oh my God, today's going to be so hard. I'm going to be so tired. I only got 42 minutes of deep sleep last night. I was letting this sleep tracker tell me how I felt instead of actually just seeing how I felt. Because before I even had a chance to see how I felt, I would open this thing up and it would tell me I was failing at sleep. How accurate are these things anyways? Most of them are pretty accurate and pretty good at detecting when you're sleeping, but they can actually overestimate your sleep time. And part of that is because they're not always very good at telling the difference between light sleep and being awake. So if you're lying in bed quietly doing nothing, it's going to have a hard time picking up and differentiating between that and when you actually fall asleep. And it's also not very good at telling the difference between sleep stages. So even the Oura Ring, which is one of the supposedly better ones, and it is pretty good in terms of accuracy, but it's only 62% accurate in detecting the difference between the 4 sleep stages. I had created this whole narrative around being a bad sleeper and someone who got no deep sleep based on information from a device that is only accurate 62% of the time. We'll talk more about what to do if you're wearing a sleep tracker. But number one, if you've been wearing a sleep tracker and you've been panicking about the results, the first thing I want you to understand is that the data you're getting isn't that accurate. So you might be panicking, like I was, over nothing, because you might not actually be a bad sleeper. You might just think you're a bad sleeper because you have a device telling you you're a bad sleeper. So what should we actually be aiming for? Like, what are we actually trying to do when it comes to sleep? At the end of the day, these are the goals that I talk to my patients about. Number one, you want to be asleep in less than 30 minutes. Number two, you want to be awake for less than 30 minutes in the night. It's perfectly normal to wake up in the night. You don't have to sleep all the way through, but if you wake up, you should be able to get back to sleep pretty quickly. If you're waking up to pee and then your brain turns on and you can't sleep for 2 hours, been there, that's a problem. If you're waking up to pee, you go back to sleep, great, no problem. Here's the big one where a lot of my patients really struggle. Do you feel rested when you wake up? Now, most of us are not going to bounce out of bed, and that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. But once you've been awake for 20 to 30 minutes, you should feel awake. And if you don't, that may be a sign that there's an underlying issue. We want to be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And here's something you may not have heard of before, which is this idea of sleep efficiency. We want our sleep efficiency to be over 85%. Now, what that means, your sleep efficiency is the percentage of time that you're in bed that you're actually sleeping. So you want that to be over 85%. So when you go into your bed at night, whatever time that is, and whenever you get out of bed in the morning, you want 85% or more of that total time to be spent sleeping. So one of the things we're going to talk about is we need to stop hanging out in bed. That's not making our sleep better. It's often making it worse because it worsens our sleep efficiency. We're spending more time in our bed not sleeping, and that can be a problem. So what can go wrong? What's happening with our sleep? The definition of insomnia, where we really start to see that this is like a consistent problem, is that you have trouble with sleeping. Again, could be trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, or waking up too early in the morning. That's happening at least 3 nights a week for at least 3 months. If you meet that criteria, you meet the criteria for insomnia. Let's talk about the different types of sleep problems because they're often related to different things. The first one is people who have trouble falling asleep. There's 2 things that are often playing into that. Number one is poor timing, and I'll talk more about that and help you figure out what your perfect bedtime is. And the second one is that your body is tired, but your brain is wired. So going back to this idea that like my partner's head is empty, my head is never empty. Like I can wake up in the middle of the night to go pee, and the second I'm awake, I'm like singing the latest Taylor Swift song in my head. Like my brain is never quiet. So if your brain is never quiet, that can make it really hard to fall asleep because in order to fall asleep, your body needs to be tired, but your brain also needs to shut up. And a lot of our brains don't like doing that. Number one issue is trouble falling asleep. Number 2 is people who have trouble staying asleep. This is incredibly common for women, especially over the age of 35 or 40. And it's called wake after sleep onset. You fall asleep, but then you wake up in the middle of the night at some point. For a lot of us, it's somewhere between 1 and 3 for some reason. And we know that wake after sleep onset definitely goes up after the age of 35. There are several things that will make you more likely to wake up in the middle of the night and to have trouble getting back to sleep. The first one is issues with your HPA. HPA is your hypothalamus in your brain, your pituitary gland, and your adrenals. Those are the glands that make cortisol, which again, we love to blame for everything. But there is an association between a pulse of cortisol and waking up in the middle of the night. So when you are sleeping, your cortisol should be relatively low. Melatonin should be relatively high. If that is not true because your day was a hot mess and you were staring at your phone right before bed, suppressing your melatonin, your cortisol and melatonin balance can be thrown off, and that can absolutely cause middle of the night waking. And part of this, and this is a conversation I have more and more with my patients, is that in order to fall asleep, but especially stay asleep and get into a deep sleep, your brain needs to feel safe. What are a lot of us doing right before bed? Half of you are listening to friggin' true crime podcasts in your ears in bed and then wondering why you can't sleep. Listening to something, seeing something, reading something, your brain is processing all that information and it's trying to figure out what the threat level is. We talked about this a lot in the episode about cortisol, which you can go back and listen to. But the Coles Notes version is, if you are doing, seeing, listening to anything that your brain perceives as unsafe, you are much more likely to have trouble sleeping. And the problem is not cortisol itself. Like, we love to blame cortisol. Yes, cortisol does come up a lot of times when we wake up in the middle of the night, but cortisol is not the problem. Cortisol is the result of your highly stressful life. So if you want to sleep better and you are worried about cortisol, number one, go back and listen to the episode about cortisol. But number two, you don't need to fix cortisol. You need to fix your life that's making your cortisol a problem. Number one thing that wakes you up in the night, stress. Number two is blood sugar dysregulation. This is way more common if you are someone who has a completely irregular meal pattern. So maybe you skip breakfast, lunch is whenever you have time between meetings, and then you have a huge dinner, and maybe you have a big snack in the evening. One of the best things you can do for your sleep is improve your blood sugar. And one of the best ways to improve your blood sugar is just to eat 3 regularly timed meals per day. It's super boring, really effective though. And in terms of the nighttime eating, most people are going to get their best sleep if their last meal or snack comes in at least 3 hours before bedtime. So ideally, you want to try to wrap up your eating 3 hours before bed. If you're someone who really struggles with blood sugar issues, some people do better having a bedtime snack about an hour before bed. This is a small snack, about 150 calories, so not a huge snack. So that's something you could play around with. Try different timings to see if this may make a difference for you. And then the third thing are hormones. And we know that as women get into their late reproductive years and perimenopause and menopause, the threshold to wake us up becomes very, very small. And especially if we throw in temperature issues, hot flashes, night sweats, or just being hot, those things can play a big role. So again, if you're having trouble staying asleep, you want to think about stress, you want to think about blood sugar, and you want to think about hormones. I couldn't do an episode about sleep without talking about coffee. Some of you are convinced that coffee doesn't interfere with your sleep, and I know that you believe that to be true, but I'm sorry to tell you it's not true. Caffeine affects your sleep. When you drink coffee, the caffeine is going to peak in your bloodstream after about 30 minutes. And it's going to take about 5 to 7 hours to clear half of that caffeine. Clearing 90% of the caffeine that you've consumed can take anywhere between 16 to 23 hours. So when you have a cup of coffee at 3 or 4 p.m., there is probably still about a quarter of that caffeine flowing through your bloodstream at 3 to 4 a.m. If you are struggling with staying asleep and you're waking up somewhere between 1 and 3, you need to look at your caffeine. I will never forget, this was years ago now, but I heard Michael Pollan talking about coffee and sleep. And he was like, it's insanity that we drink coffee because we're tired. And then we sleep poorly because we're over-caffeinated. So then we wake up tired and we drink more coffee. And then we don't, like, it creates this vicious cycle. And I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty dumb. So one of the things I did after I heard that is I switched. For a long time. I only drank decaf. I'm now back to like half calf. But if you are waking up in the middle of the night, try cutting your coffee off 12 hours before your desired bedtime. So if you go to bed at 10 p.m., try to drink all your coffee before 10 a.m. If you're a big coffee drinker, you could try switching to decaf. You could do half calf. But if you're trying to convince yourself that coffee doesn't affect your sleep, I'm sorry to tell you, again, it is. You're not a magical unicorn who is immune to caffeine. The other thing we convince ourselves helps with sleep is alcohol. because it's a sedative. It makes us feel relaxed. We fall asleep, but it does cause more wakening in the night, and it also causes more early morning awakening. I did a whole episode on alcohol and sleep. I'm not going to rehash that here, but the short version is alcohol is disrupting your sleep. End of story. So I'll leave that there. All right. The third type of sleep issues that we'll see are the people who wake up super early in the morning. And this is definitely something that I see a lot of my patients struggling with. Again, also very common in perimenopause. And the two things that can cause you to wake up earlier than you want. So this would be like you're up at 4 or 5, but you don't actually have to get up till 6, but you just are lying there and you can't get back to sleep. A lot of this is related to your circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm is going to be affected by how consistent your bedtime and wake-up times are. It's going to be affected by when you eat. It's going to be affected by whether or not you're going outside and getting actually any sunlight on your face. So if you are waking up earlier than you want, looking at what could be disrupting your circadian rhythm. And then the other big thing is your body temperature. In order for us to fall asleep and stay asleep, our body temperature drops. And as you can imagine, if you are in menopause, your body temperature doesn't drop very well. And so again, even if you're not having overt night sweats, if your body temperature is not dropping, you're going to be more likely to wake up at any point, but that early morning waking. So those are some of the things that you might want to look into depending on the type of sleep issue that you're dealing with. And if you've been struggling with your sleep, maybe you've tried melatonin because everyone tries melatonin and it hasn't worked, or you're noticing that your sleep is garbage since you turned 40, I want you to know that I am here to help. We're going to take a 30-second break so you can learn more about how to become my patient and work with me one-on-one to fix your sleep. And when we get back, I'm going to walk you through the gold standard treatment for insomnia. Are you tired of being told everything is normal, even though you're exhausted and don't feel like yourself? You deserve better care than that. In my one-on-one practice, I help women just like you do a deep dive to figure out what's really draining your energy. Together, we'll get answers and create a clear, personalized plan to help you start feeling like yourself again. If you live in Ontario or the Outaouais region and you're ready for the next step, visit drsarahv.ca to learn more and book your appointment today. Because being tired all the time isn't normal, and you don't have to keep pushing through it. So now you have a better idea of what might be causing some of your sleep issues. Again, whether it's trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up too early. And I want you to know that the gold standard treatment for insomnia is something called CBTI. Stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy Insomnia. Now, you've probably heard of CBT if you've done any kind of therapy or worked with a therapist. You may have done CBT, and maybe you're wondering, what the heck does that have to do with sleep? Well, sleep is very mental. Sleep is very psychological, which is why when you obsess and worry over your sleep, you often make it worse because your thoughts and your beliefs and your relationship to sleep and to your bed are huge players in terms of the sleep that you're getting or not. CBTI is really helpful for people who have a poor sleep efficiency. So I talked about this earlier. Sleep efficiency is the percentage of time that you are in your bed that you are actually sleeping, and you want that to be over 85%. If you're like, I have no idea what mine is, that's a great thing to track. How you would track this is you would track what time do I physically get into bed and what time do I physically get out of bed. The number of hours is like the number of hours that you're in your bed. And then you would track how many of those hours am I actually sleeping. So you divide the number of hours you're sleeping over the number of total hours you're in your bed. You want that over 85%. And if it's not, stay tuned. I'm going to teach you the bare bones of CBTI. This is also helpful if you are someone who's using kind of compensatory behaviors to try to get back to sleep. So for example, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you start to grab your phone, you read, you listen to a podcast, if you're doing anything other than the thing that no one wants to do, which is get out of bed, you could benefit from CBTI. And especially if you have something called conditioned arousal, that is where you feel awake, you feel tense, you feel frustrated or anxious when you get in your bed. So I have patients who talk about this all the time. They're like, I'm watching TV, I'm literally on the verge of falling asleep, and then I get into bed and I'm wide awake. That is conditioned arousal. And part of that is that your brain has associated your bed as a place where you are stressed and frustrated and you lie awake. Your bed is not something that your brain sees as a place where you go to relax and sleep, and that's part of the problem. One of the ways that we can see that you have conditioned arousal is you actually sleep better in new places. So for example, maybe you go to a hotel or you go on vacation to an Airbnb and you're in a new place that your brain has not associated as a place that you go to lie and be frustrated. You might actually sleep better. Whereas most people, the first night away from home, don't sleep better because it's a new place. What has happened with conditioned arousal is that, again, you have associated your bed with a place that you go to lie awake and feel frustrated. And that's part of the problem. CBTI has 5 components. I'm going to teach you 5 key rules that I want you to think about and start doing if you're not doing them. But the 5 components of CBTI are sleep restriction, stimulus control, cognitive restructuring, aka fixing your brain, sleep hygiene education, like don't drink a cup of coffee at 4 p.m., and relaxation techniques. So there are 5 key rules that are the backbone of CBTI. Rule number 1, do not go to bed until you are sleepy. Now you're going to say, Sarah, duh, that's very obvious, except it's not. A lot of us are going to bed when we are tired, not when we are sleepy, and those are 2 very different things. You probably don't sit at your kitchen table waiting to get hungry, so I need you to not lie in bed waiting to get sleepy. Tired and sleepy are very different things. Sleepy is that you can feel sleep is coming soon. So for me, that's like my eyes are getting heavy. I'm having trouble paying attention if I'm watching something or reading something. I can tell that sleep is coming. You should not be in your bed if you are not starting to feel sleepy. So what that means is that we need to stop hanging out in bed. Bed is not where we watch our Netflix. Bed is not where we scroll for 2 hours. Bed is not where we hang out because we're tired and we just want to lie down. Our bed should be the place we go to only when we feel sleepy. And most of us are going to feel sleepy about 14 to 16 hours after we wake up. So when you get up in the morning, you start right away to build something called sleep pressure. Now, assuming you've had a good night's sleep, and especially if you drink coffee in the morning like I do, your sleep pressure is going to be very low. Meaning, even if I went back to bed right now, it's 10 a.m. as I'm recording this, like if I went to bed right now, I could not fall asleep because my sleep pressure is very, very low. That sleep pressure builds and builds throughout the day, and it really starts to peak 12 hours after you've been awake. My regular wake-up time is 6:30 a.m. By 6:30 p.m., it is perfectly normal that I'm going to start slowing down. I am going to start feeling tired because my sleep pressure is building. And my ideal bedtime, your ideal bedtime, is usually somewhere between 14 to 16 hours after you wake up, because that is usually when you're going to have peak sleep pressure. So again, if we use my example, I wake up at 6:30. Sleep pressure is really going to kick in around 6:30 p.m. I'm going to start to feel tired. That's normal. By 8:30 to 10:30 p.m., I'm going to start getting sleepy, probably somewhere in that window. And for me, I joke, I can tell when it's 9 o'clock because I start yawning. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is. I could be out on a Friday night and I will start yawning at 9 o'clock. So my ideal bedtime is to get into bed when I start to feel sleepy, somewhere between 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. And my routine now is I'm usually in bed somewhere around 9 to 9:30. I read maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then I'm asleep. So I'm not spending a lot of time hanging out in my bed. I am reading, but usually I'm so tired by the time I get there, I'm so sleepy that I can't read for very long. This is one of the most important things. And I know maybe you're like, that's very basic, but your brain loves routine. And if you want to fall asleep quickly, you need to time it correctly. And that's the ideal way to do it. One of the things that a lot of people do is they fall asleep on the couch and then they try to go to bed and they have a hard time. And part of why that's happening is that when you fall asleep on the couch, you have relieved sleep pressure, right? All that sleep pressure built up, you fell asleep on the couch, you relieved sleep pressure. Now you get into your bed, you have to wait for that sleep pressure to build back up high enough so that you fall asleep again. This is why falling asleep anywhere other than in your bed is a bad idea, because you're reducing that sleep pressure you need to fall asleep. So again, if you feel sleepy, please go to bed. Put yourself to bed. You're an adult. You can do it. I said this earlier, but I'm just going to repeat it. Hanging out in bed is a problem because it worsens your sleep efficiency. When you go to bed at 8 o'clock because you're tired, but now you spend 2 hours there scrolling and watching Netflix, you are messing up your sleep. You're messing up your sleep efficiency, and you're teaching your brain that your bed is somewhere you go to hang out and watch TV. You have not taught your brain your bed is somewhere you go to sleep. One of the things that my patients find really counterintuitive is when we're working on this, the first thing I figure out for them is like, here's your ideal bedtime window. But if you are not sleepy in that window, I actually want you to go to bed later. I would rather you go to bed later, but wait till you're sleepy so you fall asleep quickly, than to wait in bed lying there waiting for sleep to find you. That's not great. A lot of times that seems counterintuitive because people think, well, if I need to get better sleep, I gotta go to bed. No. You only go to bed when you're sleepy. And if that is later than your window, that's okay. It's actually better to do that in the short term. Rule number 2, if you can't sleep, you got to get out of bed. People hate this. I used to hate this, but when I go through periods where my sleep is really bad, I do this and it works. If you are not asleep after 15 to 20 minutes, you got to get out of bed. Whether that is when you're going to bed or whether that's at 3 a.m. and you woke up to pee and it's game over, you got to get out of bed. You're not reading in bed. You're not lying in bed waiting. You're not listening to a podcast. You leave your bed. You go somewhere else that is hopefully calm and relaxing, which it should be if it's 3 a.m. You keep the lights real dim and you do something calming. So I usually will grab my book. Do not grab your phone. Grab a book, a paper book, and read. And you wait till you feel sleepy. And then when you feel sleepy, you can try going back to bed. Number 3, people also hate this one. Get out of bed at the same time every day, no matter how you slept. This is so important because what happens for a lot of people is that they have a shitty sleep, so then they sleep in. Now, when you sleep in, you're starting your 14 to 16 hour clock when you wake up. So let's say you're supposed to get up at 6, but you had a shitty sleep and you slept until 7 or 7:30. Now you're not going to feel sleepy that night until 9:30 to 11:30. So again, if your actual bedtime should be 10, you might not feel sleepy and you just create more sleep issues the next day. This is probably one of the hardest parts, but if you're trying to improve your sleep, you have to get up at the same time. And I would add to that, you have to get up shortly after you wake up. Because what happens is if you wake up and you linger there because you hate getting up, you're worsening your sleep efficiency because you're hanging out in bed awake, which is not what you're supposed to do. Which brings us to rule number 4, reserve your bed for sleep and sex only. Again, your bed is not where you go to hang out and watch Netflix. It's not where you eat all your snacks. Your bed is where you go to sleep. That's it. That's all. Rule number 5, no naps. When you have a nap, you are reducing your sleep pressure. And I just talked about why that's going to make it harder to fall asleep. Those are the 5 rules. If you have trouble sleeping, this is the gold standard treatment, not medications. Those can be helpful in the short term, but they will not fix your sleep quite as well as this can, and they can be used together. So the 5 rules. Number 1, do not go to bed until you're sleepy. Number 2, if you cannot sleep, you have to get out of bed if you've been awake more than 15, 20 minutes. Number 3, you have to get out of bed every morning at the same time. 4, your bed is for sleep and sex only. And 5, no naps. Fast forward to my story. We're now in the spring of 2023. I have been obsessing over my sleep for 2-3 years now. It is not objectively getting better. If anything, it is getting progressively worse to the point where I convinced my doctor to send me for a sleep study. And I go to this sleep study. And my biggest fear of the sleep study was not all the wires, like it's a lot, but I somehow fell asleep. I was worried, I'm going to have to pee. I wake up every night to pee once. I'm like, how am I going to do this with all these wires? She's like, no problem. If you wake up, I'll come in and I'll help you. And it's kind of creepy, like, you know how closely they're watching you, because I literally opened my eyes and she was like in the room 10 seconds later. And I was like, I have to pee. And she said, no problem. And she said, by the way, you're a great sleeper. I'm never going to see you again. And hearing that flipped a switch in my brain. And from that day on, I stopped worrying so much about my sleep. I stopped talking about the fact that I was a bad sleeper. I stopped worrying about it. I stopped waking up in the morning and saying, oh my God, I'm going to be so tired because I didn't get a perfect sleep. And almost immediately, my sleep got better. It was like as soon as I stopped worrying and obsessing about my sleep, I was able to sleep. Is my sleep perfect? No. I still have bouts where I wake up at 3 a.m. and I'm reading on my couch for an hour and a half, and it sucks. But what's very different is that if I have a bad night's sleep when I get up in the morning, number 1, I have no data because I don't track my sleep at all. I check in with how I feel and I tell myself, that was a shitty sleep and you're going to be fine. I don't say that was a shitty sleep. Oh my God, I have to cancel. I'm going to be so tired. This is going to be No. That was a hard sleep. I'm still going to be okay today. And I am. Right? Most of us, even if we have a bad night, we can still function pretty well the next night. Now, if you're not sleeping ever, that might not be true for you. But most of us, a bad night here and there we're going to be fine. My hope for you as you listen to this is that the first thing I think I want to remind you is that for some of you, better sleep is literally a decision away. And what I mean by that is that so many people tell me that they want to have better sleep, but their actions don't reflect that. You say you want to get better sleep, but you still bring your phone into your bed every night. Right? You say you want better sleep, but you let Netflix keep feeding you episode after episode. So for some of you, better sleep is literally a decision away. And it could be a decision that at 9 o'clock, I'm turning off Netflix and I'm going to read. Or I'm going to not bring my phone into my bedroom and I'm going to get a proper alarm clock. I plug my phone into the kitchen at night. I plug it in at 9 o'clock and I don't touch it until the next morning. If it is sitting on your nightstand, you will touch it. So don't put it there. Get a proper alarm clock. Don't use your phone as your alarm clock. If you're worried about emergencies, plug it in a bathroom or in a hallway. I mean, knock on wood, I haven't had my phone in my bedroom. Like, people will find you if they need to find you. I want you to start with those 5 rules of CBTI that I talked about. And if there is no improvement, I definitely want you to chat with your healthcare provider. You should be screened for things like sleep apnea, which is way more common in women than we think it is. Restless leg syndrome, which is very, very common with people with iron deficiency, which is sadly a lot of women. You need to make sure that you're not dealing with blood sugar issues, or if you're in perimenopause, there are lots of things that we can do to help support better sleep that don't always include medications. And most of all, if you have been stressing over your sleep, I will hope that you understand now why that's not helping. And I'm going to post a questionnaire in the show notes called the Dysfunctional Beliefs and Attitudes About Sleep Scale. I would encourage you to take that and see how you score. And it'll help you understand if your relationship to sleep and your thoughts and your beliefs about sleep might actually be part of the problem. If you are still wearing your sleep tracker, I would encourage you to take a break Break up with it for a couple weeks and see how you feel. I get my patients to do this all the time, and most of them feel so much better when they're not tracking. We all know that sleep is important. There are many reasons why we're not getting enough sleep, but a lot of times our relationship to sleep, our relationship to our bedroom, and the thoughts and the beliefs that we have about sleep are a big part of the problem. I hope you can see in my story that so much of what was driving my poor sleep was my thoughts about it. My belief that I was a bad sleeper was making me a bad sleeper. And when I had enough data and I started to believe that that was not true, that now I believe I actually am a fine sleeper. Does that mean I sleep perfectly all the time? No, I'm 43 and apparently in denial about perimenopause, but that's another episode. But my point is, your thoughts and your beliefs around sleep are a huge part of your sleep. I hope that after listening to this, you can explore that differently and try the CBTI. It's been a game changer for me, and it's been a game changer for so many of my patients. Have a great night's sleep, and I'll find you back here in 2 weeks. I know your time is precious, so it means so much to me that you're here. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a woman in your life who could use a little extra energy and encouragement today. It's a small way to show her you care, because we're all in this together. Wondering what the next step is? Find out what's really draining your energy by taking my fatigue fingerprint quiz at fatiguefixer.ca/quiz. You'll discover which of the 5 most common types of fatigue you're dealing with, like frazzled fatigue, where your body's exhausted but your mind won't turn off, or drained fatigue, where no amount of sleep ever feels like enough. Your results will include recommended labs to ask your doctor about, plus my top suggestions for habits and practices that can help you start feeling more rested, calm, and in control. Because here's the thing, being tired all the time isn't normal, and you deserve to feel like yourself again. And hey, if you've got a story to share, a question, or just something on your mind, leave me a voicemail. Your voice might even make it into a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not all in your head. I believe you, and we'll figure this out together. I'll see you right back here in 2 weeks.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.